Hi, this is Chef Rick Moonen, interviewing from my studio in Las Vegas. The name of my podcast is Ocean Raised. Here's where I get to dive deep into storytelling with the original gangsters of cuisine to find out where they started and what drives them today. So today I embrace with utter respect a longtime friend, colleague, and humble spoke in the wheel called the global hospitality industry. I personally know Chef Kerry Heffernan for his ability to connect with the oceans, lakes, and rivers as a skilled angler and then pay homage to their bounties they allow us to share in. He truly walks the walk, and I respect him deeply for that. Born in Pennsylvania and raised in Connecticut, Kerry Heffernan began working in New York City restaurants at age 15. Following high school, Kerry cycled through Europe, eventually setting up camp in south of France, baking croissants. He returned home to attend the Culinary Institute of America in Hyde Park, New York, graduating second in his class. After spending another year cooking and traveling through Europe, Kerry came back to New York City. He first entered the city's culinary scene as a French at a French landmark, old New York, called Le Périgord Park in Upper East Side, which he would commute to from his home in Connecticut. He was like working 6 days a week for like $100 a week, and he thought it was the greatest thing in the world. He continued honing his skills at such highly regarded restaurants as Mon Rocher with Drew Perron, Les Raisons, Restaurant Bouley with David Bouley, and Mondrian with Tom Colicchio before landing his job as chef de cuisine at 1/5 Avenue. I think that was that eventually became Otto, right? Mario Batali.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, got it. I used to go. I've been to all the restaurants. I don't know how many of them you were actually at when I dined there, but we'll get into that later. Kerry later became the executive chef of the Westbury's Hotel famed Polo restaurant, training ground for such extraordinary talents such as Thomas Keller and Daniel Boulud and Neil Murphy. Soon afterward, yeah, we'll bring that up too. These are good stories. Soon afterward, in 1998, Kerry opened Union Square Hospitality Group's 11 Madison Park as executive chef, and he eventually became a partner. Under his leadership, the restaurant received numerous accolades, including a tie with Per Se on Zagat's survey, top 20 most popular restaurants in New York. You know, a lot of competition going on in New York, and that's a biggie. The James Beard Foundation's award for outstanding service in America, and Esquire magazine's best new restaurant. During his time at 11 Madison, he also worked with Danny Myers to develop the original menu at the Shake Shack in Madison Square Park. That was the original location. The Chelsea resident credits the role for introducing him to sustainable seafood at the time when it was not a hot button issue. So back in the day, Kerry, we got really involved in sustainability issues, another great topic. And when Danny Meyer had the idea to create an eatery that served burgers and frozen custard, Kerry was asked to help craft the perfect burger. He tasted well over 100 burgers to build the Shake Shack's original burger, not realizing at the time that it had become the worldwide phenomenon that it is today. Kerry is currently chef at Grand Banks, a seasonal oyster bar and galley on the dock of a historic cod fishing schooner moored at Pier 25 in New York City. He previously spent a 5-year tenure as executive chef of New York City's Southgate and continues to work as a consultant to 15 CPW, that's Central Park West, a private restaurant in Manhattan's toniest address. Kerry remained active outside the kitchen in philanthropy, serving on the City Harvest Food Council, cooking for Share Our Strength, Project by Project, and both the Central Park and Madison Square Park conservancies, and as an advisor for several nonprofit agencies charged with seafood sustainability and conservation. In 2012, Kerry was honored as the commencement speaker at the Culinary Institute of America, his alma mater. An avid outdoorsman and seafood expert, Kerry has won several charity fishing tournaments. This guy can fish, including the Manhattan Cup and the Montauk Red Bone. Of course, you all know those. In addition to appearing as a guest judge on Top Chef All Stars, Kerry has appeared on the Today Show, Good Morning America, Martha Stewart, CBS, and CNN's American Morning. In addition to the Grand Banks, Chef Kerry is also consultant to Seaworthy, a restaurant in New Orleans specializing in sustainable seafood. Well, that's a mouthful. Kerry, first of all, thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule. I mean, you had to walk away from work today to take time out to talk with me, and that means the world to me. I appreciate it. So, Hello, say hello.
Excited.
I can't really. All right, so we're going to have a little.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
So, really, Kerry, your career is crazy. I mean, I just read through your whole CV. I mean, I want to take it back. I want to know where. I mean, you grew up you were born in Pennsylvania and grew up in Connecticut. Tell me about your family life, your parents. You obviously have two brothers. You went into business with them. You know what? Didn't you go into business with your brothers?
So, no, the two brothers that I'm in business with are not my brothers. They are fraternal brothers, the Pinkuses. My two brothers are way too smart to get in the restaurant business.
Well, tell me about growing up.
I grew up in Connecticut, as you mentioned. I was not doing all that well in school, and it turned out that I was kind of skipping school and kind of smoking pot. And I would get hungry, and to satisfy that need, I'd have to cook something. I'd sneak back into the house after my mom went to work, and I'd start messing with a ronzoni sauce and adding this or that to it. And that is truly the way I started cooking, I have to say. My mom was a caterer, so she had great instincts. My dad was an engineer. He would go to France and bring back all, like the perfect copper bowl for whipping egg whites for a souffle from Delahaye. He would, go through these recipes in Julia Child or, Mastering Art of French Cooking, and sort of methodically go step by step on the chemistry and the engineering involved. So we kind of had that appreciation from a young age. Like I said, I kind of messed up in regular school, ended up in vocational school. This is the truth. This is the unvarnished bit for you.
Oh, I love it. And that's about storytelling, my friend.
So I was 15 years old. I was in vocational school, and I was doing not very well at the regular sort of. I just wasn't paying attention to the academics in the traditional high school. So I basically said, "What is the Connecticut standard for how many, whatever subjects and credits I need to pass in order to graduate?" And they said, "Well, here it is." I gave it to me like, in this textbook test form. So I took all the work home, graduated early, got a job in restaurants, and, that's that. I mean, and to step back one more step, in that vocational school, I was the only male. There were mostly, women from the urban sort of center of Norwalk, Connecticut. And, it was a challenge. It was not like a CIA breeding ground. It was a real kind of hardcore nuts and bolts vocation. So, to kind of come out of that and make it into Culinary Institute was like a dream for my teacher, Miss Ardessa Britton. She was there for like 30 years. And I was like, one of the greatest things to happen to her. So she inspired me. I was able to sort of fulfill her dream of getting into culinary. And, that's kind of the launch of the journey, shall we say.
Well, we all build our resumes, like we so you're pretty upfront about how you got interested. I might have a similar story, actually. I'm going to have to retool my how did I get involved in this business story, if I had to be a little bit more honest like that, because there were eggs being cooked in my next door neighbor's house, late at night after someone stumbled up on a little bag of weed. It's so funny, it's just it does work though, and it's funny how we find these paths. Now, what I want to do is, you got some great doors, buddy. Your resume reads to me like it's super impressive. I mean, you're in Montrachet.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Montrachet, you were there. Now, what role? Tell me a little bit about Montrachet when you were there. Was it Debbie Ponzak? Who was running the stoves at the time?
So to go back to the 17-year-old riding his bike to the train station from Connecticut to work in New York City at Perigord Park. That was like 6 days a week, daytime saucier. And then in the afternoon, I would work with the pastry chef. The pastry chef had just come from Moulin de Mougins, and he had met this American kid over there who was very interested in cooking. That was David Boulay.
Wow.
So I was working with David Boulay when I was 16.
That's amazing.
And he was like helping the pastry chef. So we sort of became friends, met each other. I finished up Perigord Park, bicycled through Europe, came back, went right into culinary, and then basically graduated from culinary.
What year did you graduate?
So I graduated in 82.
82, got it.
So we kind of had this notion that the hotel renaissance was happening. So I went to the Waldorf Astoria, where John Doherty at age 27 was going to be the youngest executive chef of a major hotel. Yeah. And that was kind of a big deal for us young, culinary studs.
Sure.
So I worked there for a while. He got me a great apprenticeship in some great restaurants in Europe. I came back from that apprenticeship to work again with David. And, David was opening this place. Actually, he'd opened it, Montrachet. He was, that was his sort of first iteration. I think David opened for 6 or 8 months, and they'd gotten their 3 stars. And, it was seminal, I have to say, because it was like taking everything I'd seen in Europe and school and putting it into a modern sort of American context where we had all the ingredients that were local and that were sort of these new ideas using these French techniques. The crazy part is it only lasts about 7 months because at the time, David was already had investors and had people who wanted to sort of sponsor him into Boulet. I don't know if you heard the story before.
No, but I know that him and Drew did not live. They did not depart in a wonderful way. I knew that.
So Drew found out that he was opening this, right? And we would have Sundays off, right?
Yeah.
So Drew had a whole crew and another chef coming in on Sundays, doing dry runs and making a menu and practicing. And then, and this is very timely because it was Memorial Day weekend. Memorial Day weekend, they said, you know what? You guys can have Sunday and Monday off. And you know what you might want to do? You may just want to take like your knives and your shoes and whatever else you have here, because we're going to exterminate. And that stuff really gets everywhere.
Oh, man.
So everyone took all their stuff out. Tuesday, no notice, no nothing. We walk in and there's another team, 2 people standing in my spot, another chef, another menu. And Drew, I love him to death, but he's very crafty. He didn't want to fire him for the unemployment. So he said, you're not fired. You still have a job. Different menu, different chef, 2 guys standing in your spot, but you're welcome to your job. Well, everybody just bugged out. I mean, that was that. And, I can't blame either one, whatever.
Who was
so
that
I went
chef?
to Shelter Island.
Who was the chef that took over?
Andrew Whitmer. I never heard of him again. He was the guy before Debbie Ponzak.
Okay, got it. That's interesting.
So we all bugged out. I went to Shelter Island. I found a job with a guy who used to work with David Boulet. It opened the Deering Harbor Club. And I was doing garde manger and dessert, which was kind of a thing back in those days. You do both, right?
It was really, of course.
Yeah. And I had a bike that I could ride back and forth to a cottage that they'd rented for me. And, it was this idyllic, my first real introduction to the East End. I was living in a cottage, riding my bike back and forth to work, watching fishermen come in with their whole, sharks and tunas in the back door at, whatever, 3 a.m. if they just get back off the offshore run. It was wild. And then Ariane Dagan said to me, she said,
D'Artagnan.
No, wait a minute. Yeah.
Or she had tree.
So wait a minute.
After what is it? Tree petit cochon or something?
No, D'Artagnan.
Okay.
So after Shelter Island, I went back to the city. I started working in sort of regular restaurants, and then I had a chance. David was getting ready to open up Boulet.
Right.
And before I went there was Ariane said, you should spend some time with my father in the Southwest, in Gascony, with the foie gras and the ducks. And I said, sure, why not? I mean,
yeah.
So I go down there. She goes, oh, one thing, by the way, there's a guy. He's from New Jersey. He's a little bit lost. He's not speaking French. He doesn't know. You make little fun of him, this and that. His name is Tom Colicchio. Maybe you can help him. So Tom and I met in this like total like middle of Gascony is like, I don't know, maybe the South. I don't know how to describe it, but it's like the middle of nowhere.
Right.
And these country bumpkins were just abusing Tom, like with these stupid little kitchen tricks, like we do, right? Messing with his sauces, this and that. And Tom's from New Jersey. He's just going to haul off and punch these guys. He's not going to take that.
Did he have a ponytail back
Anyway,
then?
I get in there. He had hair, that's for sure.
No, why were they picking on him?
They were picking on him because they could, because he didn't speak French. That's it. And because they just because he was. And so he and I started working together. We started doing a lot of specials and things. They gave us all this free reign. We went to Spain and we lost the car. We got arrested. We got all kind of trouble. It was crazy. Then I came back, worked at Boulet for 2 years, started in kind of Garde Manger. I had Dan Silverman work for me in Garde Manger. I had Amy Sherber work for me in Garde Manger.
You eventually married her.
Eventually married. Who else? I mean, it was just crazy, the roster of people that was going through there in those days. And we got our asses. I mean, that was brutal. We got our asses kicked every single night.
This is at Restaurant Boulet.
Restaurant Boulet. Yeah, they're proper Boulet. It was
just for those listening. I just want to say a couple of things. First of all, you mentioned Tom Valenti. Tom Valenti is a great.
Tom Colicchio.
Well, you worked with Valenti too. You said
no.
Oh, Colicchio. That was Colicchio in
that was
Gascony?
Colicchio.
Oh, my bad. Okay, never mind. I don't have to explain who Tom Colicchio is. Never mind. Let's move on from that. But Boulet, Restaurant Boulet was so well thought out. You walked in the front door and you walked down a hallway that had apples and stuff in it, right? Isn't that correct?
That's right.
Just so that your sense of
barrel vaulted ceiling.
Exactly. So that you went through a transformation from the streets of New York City to this gorgeous, well-appointed dining room and sat down to some of the most elegant food. I completely recall a halibut with a ratatouille crust on it, something that I had there. There were epiphanies happening in that room, as I recall. You're looking like you don't remember that dish. It's okay.
Oh, totally. I remember all those dishes.
I
mean, we had mise en place that was just like, if you worked next to him on the fish station, we call it the hot seat.
Mm-hmm.
We had bus tubs, 3 bus tubs. And in each bus tub, there was like 8-ounce styrofoam cups of like confit shallots. You can imagine how many 8-ounce styrofoam cups fit in a bus tub. And imagine times 3. So the amount of little ingredients of mise en place he had to manipulate the dishes and change the dishes. And he could never make it like, the worst thing was if Tim Zagat came in, because we were number 1 in Zagat. So Tim Zagat would come in, and David, and I love him to death, creative genius, the most creative guy with food I've ever met in my life, for sure. David would stand back and go, he had chives last week. I'm like, chives? What are we going to do? We're going to reinvent chives? He had to make he had to reinvent the food for him every time and make, it was.
Yeah, but you had like 75 styrofoam cups in front of you. I think I did. There's got to be 24.
But I'd have to remember which ones I used the week before. It was wild. It was wild.
That's unbelievable. Okay, so how long did you work at Boulet?
2 years.
Okay, and then where?
And so I eventually became sous chef there.
Uh-huh.
And then, it was like, Tom was working for Thomas Keller at the time. And, we were just killing ourselves, and we're looking at each other on, we get together and have a drink and you're like, these guys are nuts. So Tom had an offer from a guy in New Jersey to run this place called Mondrian on 59th Street. So he was a chef, and he called me, and I was just Jersey money. Not that kind of Jersey money. I was actually Morgan Stanley.
Okay. So who were the brothers? Who were the brothers from New Jersey? What were their names? There's 2 guys that lived in New Jersey.
Was it Dennis Foy?
Dennis Foy. Thank you. That's what I'm trying to think of.
That's right. Dennis Foy. You're a very good memory. That's right. Yeah. Dennis was a whole nother character. Dennis was supposedly a former Green Beret. We don't know. Told a lot of stories. Pretended to be a chef. Realized that Tom was like 10 times his, equal in the kitchen. So he just put Tom on the menu, and then he could.
You can't blame him though. They worked for Robert Irvine.
I didn't know that.
No, I'm kidding. Never. He said he was in like there was a story out about it. I'm sorry. I thought maybe you were familiar with it. That he was saying that he was in the military when he really wasn't, and all this. Sometimes you fake it to make it. I mean, that's all I'm just trying to say. So, Montrachet was.
He wasn't a terrible guy. He wasn't a terrible guy. I don't really hold it against him. But anyway, I mean, the bottom line is that Tom was the chef. I was the sous chef, and we started running this restaurant, and we were really like sort of taking what we learned at Raquel, which was Thomas Keller's restaurant, and Boulay, and sort of pushing it to the next level in our estimation. So it was a lot of fun. Worked very hard. We got 3 stars.
It was terrific.
New York Times in those days, which was a lot. And it was a blast. After that, I took a little time off. I did like
you didn't mention that used to be the Playboy Club. You forgot to mention.
That's right. The Playboy Club.
That was the Playboy Club years ago on 59th Street. Was it 59th?
59th, exactly. Yeah. Just east of 5th Avenue.
Yeah.
On the north side of the street. Yeah.
Those are good. Those are great restaurants. Had an elevator.
So they're totally an elevator, and all kinds of stuff used to happen in that elevator, from what I understand.
Yeah.
And there's a private dining room where more stuff happened. Believe me.
Yes.
So after that, I kind of took this, I took 2-3 months off, and I wanted to go snowboarding all across the West and fishing. So I started, I knew the pastry chef at Coyote Cafe, Susie, and she, Mark Miller wasn't there that much, but Mark Kiffin was. I don't know if you know him. Mark Kiffin was his chef de cuisine, great guy, big tall guy. And so I kind of got this crash course in Southwestern cuisine at Coyote Cafe in Santa Fe in, what must now be the early 90s, late 80s. And I was snowboarding and driving. I went, to Santa Fe Mountain. I went to Taos. I went to Crested Butte. I went to every mountain in Colorado, just snowboarding and fishing. I had a friend who was working in Vail at the time, Michael Schwartz.
Yeah,
Michael Schwartz,
big name in Boston.
Michael Schwartz was at Lostello in Vail, and so I'd hang out with him, and then fish, cook, snowboard. I had this just break, and it was kind of awesome to see all these places. Went through Utah. Did some mountain biking in Moab and all that stuff, and that just a great time. So after that, came back to the city and basically was at the Westbury, Westbury Hotel. They needed to see, it was a union, it was a hotel. There was all sorts of things happening. I mean, it was a great place, and I learned a lot. But the hotels are tough.
Wasn't for you.
I worked, at the Waldorf. I worked at that place, and then the union. It's just as So you always think you can change something, and at the end of the day, it's just the union wears you down. You know how it goes.
Yes, sir.
So after that, although I had some great times there, I have to say. I mean, I would have the craziest clients come in. I probably met maybe more celebrities there than anybody. Bruce Springsteen would come in and hang out at the bar, totally casual. Robert Plant, Al Pacino. Al Pacino used to come in in the middle of the afternoon and want tuna on a rye toast. And he was all whacked out, and he was a little whatever, his girlfriend, mother of his child, we don't know who, crazy stuff.
Is that where Sidney Poitier came in?
And that's where I met Sidney Poitier came in, and he was the nicest guy. Honestly, the most genteel, princely, classy guy on the planet, as far as I'm concerned. He wanted a little bit of white rice with his lunch.
Yeah.
And he asked me, he thought it was like a big deal. And I'm like, yeah, okay, it's going to take me 25 minutes. I can't change physics, but he waited. And then he knew So I knew when I'd see the reservation that he probably want rice. And he was so appreciative. He thought it was like really a big deal. And I'm like, there's people who demand stuff and don't even look twice and think, that they deserve it. And here you are asking for something simple and being so appreciative, so kind. I mean, there's just no words that I can sort of use to describe what a prince he was. He was just unbelievable. Oh,
that's super cool.
Yeah. So after that, then I got the job with Alfred at 1/5. Worked at Gotham for a while. Got to hang out with Bill Telepan and all these great guys and
huge names.
That was amazing. Huh?
Just a huge names. Everybody, Bill Telepan. I think about all of his career, and I think about all the other people that you
exactly, and Fish. And Alfred taught me a lot. I really learned a lot from that because Gotham in those days until very recently they were doing like 350 covers with very, very refined food, very intricate, flavors and presentations and everything. To maintain the consistency, right? But the consistency with that volume over, what did they have? 4 3-star reviews over 20 years? I don't know.
It deserved it. It was. I love sitting at that bar.
Yeah, it deserved
I love sitting in the dining room with the umbrella. I mean, the parachute lighting. It looks like parachutes are coming down all over you because that's how they lit up the room. The kitchen was immaculate. It was pretty spacious. I remember. But one thing I recall about that restaurant was
that's right.
Over the dishwasher was a huge piece of wood with every piece of china and silverware and everything attached to it, the price of it, what it cost. So that when things would get broken, it wasn't a laughing matter.
You're right. That's funny. I forgot about that. That's a good one. Thank you, Rick.
I thought that was brilliant. And so you worked that kitchen as well. God, I can't believe it.
Well, I worked because Alfred is so serious. He said, before you go into 1/5, I need you to see how we do things here. Right. And so I worked at Gotham. Yeah. And so then, eventually, fast forward to 1998, Danny was opening 11 Madison. I didn't know about it really, or heard rumors or whatever. Right. He had this chef that he'd worked with, Brian Whitmer, I think I honestly don't remember. His first name was Brian. He had grown up in Union Square Cafe with Michael.
Okay.
And he'd gone to France with Danny. They'd kind of really done a lot of sort of deep research together. And at some point, Danny realized it wasn't going to work. So we're talking August, and the restaurant is like completed September 1. So Tom was chef at Gramercy. Tom suggested Danny, said, listen, my friend Kerry, maybe you should talk to him because he's kind of got a background that would, work here. And I met obviously Danny and Richard Carrain, his chief operating partner, the guy who basically did everything in all the restaurants. Richard was a huge influence on my life. Great guy.
Met him several times. Yeah.
Still with the company to this day.
Wow.
And we basically said, okay, here's what you want to do. I got it. And he just trusted me. And, we opened. It was a great team in place, thankfully. So all I had to do was sort of, direct them. All I had to do was point them in the right direction and give them the recipes and the ingredients. We were 4 blocks from Union Square Green Market. It was a dream. And it was a big, busy restaurant, as you recall. We're talking, we would do 400 covers, 450 covers easy on a Saturday night.
Well, you had different levels.
And we were doing, that's right. Different levels. And then the private dining room.
Yeah.
And, we were doing what I thought was very progressive American interpretations of these sort of French classics, like the skate wing on the bone. Like it was this thing. It tasted better. We would actually do this like very quick pre-poaching in a court bouillon. Yeah, so it would flavor like the bones, firm it up a little bit, flavor the bones, and then you could peel off the skin. That was the real reason.
Oh, exactly.
Because, peeling.
You basically dip them.
A pain in the ass, right?
You dip them in a really acidic boiling liquid.
Yeah. And then you let it sit there, just let it just cool down that liquid, and
Yeah.
it firms it up. You peel the skin off, and you've got this flavorful meat.
Mhm.
And then you roast it, with, you dip it in milk and panko and brown butter and the usual time, and baste and and we served it with caper berries, and it was this thing. And then what we did was that classic veal cordon, that little trace
Yep.
of veal jus around the outside. I don't think anybody today even, like, who knows if they know that that was the thing. But
we use glace de viande.
Yeah, right. Glace de viande. That's right.
The meat glaze. That's
just a tiny little cordon.
Oh, before squeeze bottles.
Yeah, right. And tons of parsley, caper berries, and croutons. So it was Grenoble style, Grenoble, and lemon fillets. My staff loved me for putting lemon fillets in, like, the most popular dish. That was great. That was a big one. And then we would do walleye. We would do all this stuff that people we were doing.
Where did you get pike perch?
So we would get it from an Aboriginal source in northwest, in, like, Washington. So they would catch it in the nets, and they would catch big ones, like nice, like really good ones.
Yeah.
So they were there, and that's like one of the greatest freshwater fishes that we have.
100%. I agree.
So tasty, so wonderful. We would do the beef shank terrine with foie gras, cold with the gelée of banyuls, and we would do the shellfish platters. This is 1998. We would do calves brains, kidneys, liver, all this stuff that
Yeah.
I don't know. And then everyone else kind of got the credit for it 3 years later. Whatever. I love Mario, but they kind of got, like, all the credit on that one.
Get it a dig. No, we were doing that stuff at Le Cirque. A lot of that.
Yeah, right. Even the guy who ended up nosing me out on Top Chef Masters, Chris Cosentino, great guy, great chef. All of a sudden, 2012, and he's like the organ meat guy. I'm like, 14 years ago, I was doing this, whatever.
He's the awful guy.
That's right. That's right.
It's Chris Cosentino, hard to get a word in.
So that was 11 Madison. 11 Madison was a blast, I have to say.
Yeah.
We would, then sort of 9/11 hit, and we were, so it was a little hiccup there, and the city changed a bit, as you recall. But Danny was so much a part of the community that when 9/11 hit, we were on 24th Street, so we were north of 23rd, where basically you couldn't go, downtown or whatever. No, 14th, I think it was. There's an armory on 25th between Park and Madison and Park. Or is it Madison and Lex?
Right.
And the armory became the place where they sent all the families to look for love. So this was a really tough time for me. They sent all the families to go and, like, get news of their loved ones. And as you recall, there were basically no survivors. And so these poor people were there waiting for days, something. They hoped they would,
Yeah. And I was out fishing.
But we fed them.
We awesome.
Fed those people. We like organized, and out of nowhere, there materialized so much goodwill in the city. There was everything from Cisco tractor trailers with pallets of water to people showing up with a pie plate of brownies, and everyone wanted to help. Everyone knew that this was the place where these people were sort of waiting and needed some comfort and some love and some food.
I remember that.
And we became like the staging area. We were there pretty much for 24 hours for the first 3 or 4 days. It tapered off after that, obviously, but I mean, sort of being there, and it was actually good to have something to do. Everyone felt so helpless, and they wanted to do something, and a lot of guys who were down feeding people, and we did that. We fed a lot of first responders and go downtown and stuff. But that was sort of Danny's typical outreach to the community that's just who he is.
Yeah, he's definitely out front and in the face of the public in that manner. You know, he was very well received.
Yeah.
He was tremendous. And then he wrote the book, Setting the Table. He's done so many things. I mean, Danny Meyer is Danny Meyer. I mean, if you were in New York City around that era, especially, you knew who he was. Now he's, you know, I don't know what he's up to now, but I don't think he ever stops, does he?
No, he doesn't stop. More or less the same thing, but everything changes. The fads and focus, and everybody's got, you know.
Yeah. So Levin Madison had a great run.
We got to keep churning it out.
Yeah, it was a great run.
But
a lot of big parties. What's that?
He introduced me the idea of, like, you know, sustainability and sort of looking at what's happening. And so I remained close friends with Tom. We would go fishing together, and I would sort of see what I could catch, which is a perfect segue to this beauty.
Oh, what do you got there?
See that? Wow. So that's a bluefish that I caught. And, you know, lucky enough, we got a license Sag Harbor, and this fish was maybe 200 yards from the back door, believe it or not. This time in May, they come in shallow. It's pretty cool. Caught by me. No, this is the bigger one. This was caught by my son, actually, I have to say. I got the smaller one. He got the bigger one. You know that goes.
Would you get the snapper?
Yeah.
That's funny.
And then I smoked it. And, you know, here we are. We have like the accompaniment of the crisp potatoes and the creme fraiche lemon pickled onions. I got a beautiful peony from my garden for you.
I can't. I gotta eat this. Put it through. I want to eat it. That is
put it through. There we go. And then I was at the green market this morning, and they got the chamomile flowers, which make such a great. People don't use chamomile in savory food, but I think they should. You know, we use it. We make an oil to serve around roasted fish. But I remember Eric Repair remember tomato water? Remember everyone was doing tomato water?
Oh yeah, you salt tomatoes,
tomato consomme,
let them drip,
and get that and you bring it just up to a simmer, and it clarifies. You get this perfectly clear, fresh tomato flavor.
Yes.
Well, he did one with chamomile that just blew me away. I was like, I never expected tomatoes and chamomile to be such great partners. So that's what I use it in now. I use it with tomatoes because they're just sort of coming in season 2. Thank you, Eric.
Yeah. Well, he's a big influence on the seafood world. Let's talk seafood for a little while. I'm sorry, your story. I could talk to you for hours. I swear, it blows my mind. But let's talk about your focus on seafood. I mean, I have gone to Washington D.C. certain times of the year with you, and we've talked to senators and congresswomen and congressmen about certain issues that affect our oceans. One being the Magnuson-Stevenson Act. You know, depending on who's at the helm at that time, certain things get kind of sat upon, and some things get supported. And well, you being, I was always impressed with how articulate you were on the subject of current sustainability issues. Tell me how we got there, and we'll talk aquaculture hopefully for a couple of minutes before we have to end.
But yeah, so I got involved, you know, again, vis-a-vis Danny and sort of seeing what was out there. But really what changed my mind was being in like fishing, because I saw, you know, the ups and downs. You know, I saw striped bass in the last 7 years just sort of crash. They're still around and we still get them, but the numbers and, you know, sort of the recruitment, the young of the year, you know, they're so challenged. There's so many issues around it. I raised oysters under my dock in Sag Harbor, and I saw the water quality sort of deteriorate over the past 14 years to where I was having like, you know, 15 to 20% mortality, where I have like 60 to 70% mortality now, because, you know, the same problems: ocean temperature rise, acidification, you know, higher levels of nitrogen, all these problems that all work together to sort of confound the growth of finfish and even shellfish. So it's really, I know we got a lot on our plate these days with what's happening in the world, but we cannot forget that we are trying to leave a better place for our children. And, you know, when all is said and done, on every other issue, the world we leave behind will be, hopefully, I'd like it to be better. I don't want it to be less than we currently have. I mean, you have kids, I have kids.
Yeah. Big goal.
I can't imagine them seeing this sort of the degradation and seeing that we stood by and did nothing.
I agree 100%. But nonetheless, even with COVID, I think we're still growing as globally, population-wise, and we have to feed the planet.
Right.
And in comes the aquaculture. A way of producing, really high quality proteins. When done correctly, and there's been a learning curve of how to do that correctly, so that you're not, being detrimental to our environment, to indigenous species, etc. So tell me about what's your feeling? What's your take on aquaculture 10 years ago, aquaculture now?
I'm a huge fan. Can I walk up to the oyster bar? Is that okay?
You can do whatever you want. Of course.
All right. So first of all,
it's going to be noisy.
Let's have a look.
Ah, beautiful. Manhattan.
New York Harbor, Freedom Tower.
Yes.
Beautiful sort of vessel from the 1920s.
That is so cool.
People all having fun, most of whom didn't agree to be recorded. So look here. How are you? We have 4 to 6 kind of oysters at any one point, shucked by our lovely team.
Hey. That's awesome.
We serve between 4,000 and 7,000 oysters a week on this vessel alone. And I'll get back inside because you probably can't hear me.
No, I'm hearing you.
Oysters are a huge piece of what we do.
Well,
and 5 restaurants.
Everyone's got to listen to this because they're filter feeders. One single oyster can filter 50 gallons of water per day. So the fact that you're supporting and doing that is you're essentially cleaning up the environment in which they are farmed. That's a prime example of 100%. Fantastic aquaculture. But I'm trying to talk about fin fish. How do you feel about fin fish aquaculture?
I have several. So we currently use an RAS steelhead. So for those of you who don't know, RAS is recirculated aquaculture system, totally land-based, filtered water that they bring up to a certain level of pH. And then they introduce these fish at various stages, changing the tanks, filtering the water. So what they're doing is they're actually bringing the means of production close to the population center.
Right.
So they can cut down on some of that carbon footprint. And it's, it's still, I'll be honest, it's still in its infancy. We're still sort of working out the kinks. It's still not the cheapest way to do it, but it's, they're coming up with feed mixtures. I look at the feed statement whenever someone says, aquaculture. Right. And when I see the feed statement, that says they're using fish racks, soy, all sorts of other protein sources that are not taking massive amounts of bait out of the ocean, because that's one of the problems with some aquacultures. They take so much bait out of the ocean to make the fish meal.
You're raising carnivores. It's not that easy.
And you're taking that biomass away from the whales, the sharks, the tuna fish, the whole wild population, because the whole thing, it kind of comes down to balance,
Yes.
I mean, if you take too much of one thing, you're going to screw up something else down the road. So, we're looking at using a lot of marine algae. So we have seaweed in 3 dishes on the menu. Mm-hmm. And that to me is the future, because, there is like the kelp farming here in the Northeast is they're taking these lobster guys using the same gear. They sort of, they tweak the kelp aquaculture so that it would fit within the lobsterman's gear that he already has. Right. So he can just change from lobster to kelp, summer to winter without missing a beat. Now, the good thing about the kelp, as you know, Rick, is that it metabolizes the nitrogen. Yes. We have too much nitrogen in a lot of our water. Mm-hmm. So it's a carbon sequestered and nitrogen is the food.
Yep.
And kelp can grow up to a foot a day under the right conditions. So it's just a massive benefit to the ocean. And we raise awareness and have people eating, all the great aquaculture that's out there. There's a lot more aquaculture that, on the finfish side that I don't necessarily know all of them. And I can't wait to try them because people are coming up with new ways. They're looking at this equation and they're saying, how can I create something that is at once amazing to eat and is going to be maybe net positive, not just, a subtraction from the marine environment.
All right. That's a perfect opportunity for me to bring this up then. So you're a member of the Blue Ribbon Task Force for Monterey Bay Aquarium, are you not?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Have you had the opportunity to listen in on the regional discussions about aquaculture and the future of aquaculture through the eyes of
Absolutely.
Okay, so I found it very intriguing that we have this organization in the United States that regulate and place limits upon certain fisheries. And a fishery is a established targeted species. Let's put it that way, whether it's farmed or not, but we don't do enough farming in the United States, really. We should do more. But the thing that I found very intriguing is the offshore, like further out offshore, is much lower biomass, much more suited for aquaculture if it's done correctly. So this is where Forever Oceans comes in. They have, a CEO, they have a person that is specifically, his task is to be carbon positive, fish positive, nature, sustainability positive. I'm not sure how to say it, because you end up, purchasing the rights to certain parcels of water. And so they want to take that and turn it into a sanctuary, much like, the water right off on the shoreline in Monterey Bay, at the Monterey Bay Aquarium. But this is further out. I just find it intriguing that, they're going to be doing activities that are going to still farm further out with mechanical feeding systems so that it's not utilizing a lot of back and forth use of fuel and things that are going to be negative on the environment anyway, and come up with some really delicious fish. I'm going to send you some hamachi. The Forever Oceans is coming out with a tremendous, delicious amberjack hamachi. They started a pilot program in Hawaii, did really, really well, and now they're doing it in Panama.
So it's funny you mentioned that because I was fishing in Hawaii over Christmas and we saw it. And our good friend Tim Fitzgerald knows the guys there and offered to get me a tour. I couldn't, I was with family, blah, blah, blah. But we were fishing those very fertile waters right off Kona. And we saw the farm and we saw all the amazing aquaculture that's going on over there. And it was really impressive.
It is
so
impressive.
Of course, 9 hours on the boat, one strike, one fish landed, blue marlin here.
That's sad. You're the fish king. You're the fish whisperer.
I landed a blue marlin. I don't care. Whatever. You know how it is. You go fishing, the season this, season that, wind here, tide there, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. It was a beautiful day and we landed a blue marlin. It was awesome.
That's amazing. I've never done that. We've got sailfish, but never blue marlin. I have to go fishing with you, man. I mean, I always threaten, and I hope to see you in October. I know we'll speak later off podcast there, but it's going to have some fun racing cars. Okay, tell me about your passion for racing cars. Where did that come from? I know that you enjoy, let's say, going fast with very nice vehicles.
The motorsports.
Yes.
It was just kind of coincidental. We were like, 2008, we got a BMW M6 and they, as part of the program, they take you down to South Carolina to the factory and they have a track and you get 2 days on the track to just beat the crap out of every version of the M family and do every crazy thing in the car. And once you're bit like that, it's, and so it's funny because your two like hometowns of Austin and Las Vegas have very crazy racing stories for me. In Austin, I did another BMW event where we get to drive on Circuit of the Americas, the Formula One track.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And that was absolutely nuts. I mean, because that's a big track. And, you're talking top speed. If you can get there like 160 for guys like me, maybe more like for guys like you, but we were having just a blast. And Las Vegas, you have exotics racing, where it's a short track, but you can drive every crazy car on the planet. You want to drive a Lamborghini Murcielago, you want to drive a Lamborghini Aventador, you can do it. And usually there's a guy sitting next to you telling you how to do it, so you don't get too crazy.
Right.
Still, those cars are absolute animals, and they want to eat you alive. They want to no electric, no like Tesla. Oh, I'm going. I can go 0 to 60 in 2.5 seconds. Who cares? I mean, I'm all about the environment, but if you want to race a car, you want it to be loud, angry, dangerous. You don't, the gear shifts that knock your head back. You want to feel the road. It's not about like some amusement park ride where you
That's awesome.
hit some perfect. I don't know. That's my passion. There you have it.
So here it is, folks. You heard it. It's Kerry Heffernan, from munchies to racing cars with an environmental. I mean, finding the time for all the things that you do for the environment, for your support is tremendous, and I just want to publicly say thank you.
Well, I want to publicly say thank you for starting the movement, Rick. I mean, who can forget? Give them a break, on the swordfish, and give a pass on the sea bass. You are the original gangster there, and everybody knows it. I mean, and you haven't stopped. You are tireless. There's always, there's something with your name on it always coming through my inbox. And, as you said, they're long battles sometimes. There's just like, you can't give up. The Pebble Mine, perfect example. Last week, they finally said, no, it's not going to happen. But it was not easy. And it was not for guys like you getting the public and me involved. Yeah. Who knows if that would have worked? You talk about Magnus and Stevenson. Yeah. Sorry?
I had a few trips
up there.
You talk
about Magnus and Stevenson. Yep. We had Leader Schumer on this boat talking about Magnus and Stevenson to 150 chefs and journalists and everything. And it was a big deal. And that was through our good friend, Tim Fitzgerald, Environmental Defense Fund. They said they had been talking to the speaker and they wanted, to find, and this was the venue he chose to sort of promote. And as you know, Magnus and Stevenson is the overarching framework that basically keeps the world's most sustainable fisheries, which is the U.S., in place. And without those parameters, without those sort of benchmarks and goals, our fisheries would be in much, much worse shape. We're lucky. As much as I gripe about like the striped bass, the porgies are doing really well. Black sea bass is a success story.
Oh, we love
Even
it.
fluke is sort of on the mend. And, we see things like, protecting the bait, the menhaden, the bunker. The fact that we stopped using the bunker for cosmetics and leaving them in the ocean has brought whales, tuna fish, bluefish, striped bass to literally the back door of New York City. There's whales in New York Harbor because of the Menhaden Act. There's tuna fish, giant tuna being caught within sight of New York City because of the Menhaden protections.
Yeah. Look at you. Your passion is so palatable. I mean, I could feel your excitement, and that's the thing that just makes me very, very privileged to have you in my life, man. I love you, Kerry. Kerry, you're just a great man, great spokesperson, putting out great food with a great story behind it. I've had you for over an hour now, so I'm gonna release you. I'm gonna take the circle hook out of your mouth. It took me how many attempts did it take till we finally got this opportunity? I don't know.
Yeah, I apologize. We're opening 5 restaurants, and as a seasonal place, hiring 350 people in this labor market has not been easy. I had a chef who wanted to basically quit today, and I had to talk him off the ledge and say, listen, because they got hammered on Memorial Day. They were like, that's how it is. We go hard for 4 months, and then we
used to high five each other over those.
Love it.
We used to high five each other over those crazy nights. Have just a couple of beers and get back to work. All right, Kerry. Thank you, my brother. I appreciate everything. And
love you. Thank you for having me aboard.
All right, man. I'm going to send you some fish. Keep on rocking on.
foreveroceans.com